head of the German military intelligence, Abwehr, Canaris initially reported that there were only 5,000 British soldiers on Crete and no Greek forces. It remains unclear whether Canaris, who had an extensive network of intelligence sources in Greece, was misinformed or intended to sabotage the landing plans in this way. Canaris also predicted that the civilian population would greet the Germans as liberators due to strong republican and anti-monarchist sentiments in society. As subsequent events showed, Canaris seriously underestimated the patriotic attitude of part of the population of Crete. The intelligence of the 12th Army painted a less optimistic picture, but it also significantly downplayed the number of the garrison and troops evacuated from the mainland. The commander of the 12th Army, General Lohr, was confident that 2 divisions would be sufficient for a successful capture of the island. However, as a precaution, he kept the 6th Mountain Division in reserve in Athens. Later, this precaution proved to be fully justified. The main weapon of the German paratrooper was the Mauser 98K carbine. About a quarter of the deployed paratroopers were armed with the MP-38 or MP-40 submachine gun instead of the carbine. Each squad had at its disposal a light machine gun MG-34. The lack of heavier weaponry was attempted to be compensated by a novelty, the 75mm recoilless gun 7.5 cm Leichtgeschütz 40. Weighing 130 kilograms, it was 10 times lighter than the German 75mm field gun, with only a third less range. Weapons and ammunition were dropped in containers. The Germans used parachutes of different colors to designate containers with various cargo, personal weapons, heavy weapons, ammunition. Recoilless guns LG-40 were dropped in special bundles of 3 parachutes. Unlike paratroopers from most other countries, German paratroopers jumped without carabiners and machine guns. Paratroopers armed with MP-38-40 left the aircraft with their weapons, as the compactness of the MP-38-40 allowed it to be attached under the parachute suspension system, which were dropped separately in special containers. It sometimes happened that paratroopers could land far from their weapons. At these moments they could only rely on personal weapons, pistols and hand grenades, which were stuffed into the roomy pockets of their parachute suits. The British forces used Lee Enfield rifles, Bren light machine guns, and Vickers machine guns. The Allied forces in Crete lacked sufficient mobility to redeploy troops necessary for a quick response to the attacks by paratroopers before they had time to organize their defense. The Allies had about 85 guns of various calibers, some of which were trophy Italian guns without ammunition. The air defense consisted of a single light anti-aircraft battery of 20mm guns, with its forces divided between 2 airfields. The guns were carefully camouflaged in nearby olive groves, and part of them were ordered not to open fire during the initial air attacks by German fighters and assault aircraft, in order to preserve them in reserve. The tank forces of the Allies consisted of 9 infantry tanks Matilda IIA from Squadron B of the 7th Royal Tank Regiment and 16 light tanks Mark VIB from Squadron C of the 4th Hussars. Like most British tanks of that time, the 40mm guns of the Matildas only had armor-piercing shells in their ammunition, which were ineffective against infantry. The tanks had a number of technical problems. Their engines were worn out and could not be repaired with the resources available on Crete. As a result, most of the tanks were used as pillboxes at strategic defense points. Many of the British the Greek troops were predominantly armed with 6.5mm Mannlicher Skanauer mountain carbines and 8mm Steyr Mannlicher M1895 rifles, received as reparations after the end of World War I. About 1,000 Greeks had incredibly outdated French Gras rifles of the 1874 model. Most of the heavy armaments had previously been transferred to the continent, and the Greek garrison in Crete only had 12 outdated French Hotchkiss M1907 machine guns and around 40 light machine guns from various manufacturers at their disposal. A major problem was the lack of ammunition. In some units, there were only 30 rounds per soldier. Due to the mismatch of weapon calibers, the Greeks could not use British ammunition. Therefore, the Greeks were stationed in the eastern sector, where no significant German forces were expected to attack. Anks were lost not in battle, but on the march due to the harsh operating conditions in the mountainous terrain.